So are ball pythons good beginner pet snakes? I would say yes and no. Pretty much today what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break it down in two different ways. So the first way we're gonna do it, we're gonna talk about the pros and cons with these guys. And then we're gonna break it down based off of handability, cost, and size, right? So if you're interested, tap in. So the best way to really chop it up is that or the best way to really kind of, start it off, I guess, is that these do make great animals. I don't want to, scare you off or make it seem as if these are like dangerous, because they're definitely not. They're awesome, really cool snakes. And I think they make great beginner snakes. They really do. It just really depends on, a couple different things. And I really want to break those things down for you guys, right? So I just want to make it kind of super honest, So before I start, I just want to say the most important thing to do is to do your research. And if you're watching this, then, you're doing the first step, which is great. And that's research, right? So I commend you for that. And researching is so important. And I think when you're in the hobby, you're always researching. So researching never really ends, but at the same time, you want to make sure you have your husbandry on point before you even start. Especially if you're a beginner, you're new, highly recommend that, because it's gonna just keep you from stressing out, and it's gonna keep your animal from getting sick, So for example, if your humidity is too low, that can cause stuck shed, that can cause respiratory illnesses, all kinds of stuff. If the temperatures aren't right, it can mess them up. And so I'm sure you don't want that to happen to your pet snake. So, just make sure you do your research. That's the most important thing, because if you're stressed out, then, if you're stressed out, then they're probably gonna get stressed out. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, you want it to be a fun experience for both of you. You know what I'm saying? When I say fun experience, it's for them as long as it's not stressful. It's fun, I guess, technically, right? It's an adventure. So I'm gonna start first with the pros, and then we're gonna work our way into the cons. So the pros, I would say, these snakes are definitely a Netflix and chill type of snake. You can definitely bring them on the couch. I'll put some Netflix on, whatever, and I just throw them on my lap, and we just chill. And so, that's why I call them kind of the Netflix and chill snakes. My boa is also the same kind of way too. So my whole point is that a lot of people sometimes say these guys are, pet rocks, and I don't agree with that at all. I think if you're handling them consistently, you're gonna see that they're really cool. They're adventurous. I wouldn't say as adventurous as a boa. They're a little bit more shy and a little bit more nervous. So, boas aren't as afraid or as head shy, I feel like. I'm not really trying to compare these guys to boas either, but that's just kind of a little comparison. So that's just the first pro, I think. It's just these guys are totally chill, they're awesome, they're super docile. So the next pro is that they're affordable. I got this snake here, I got this ball python for I think $100, 90 bucks, $100, whatever. So, you can definitely get them for under 100. There's so many different types of morphs. Like I said, this is just a normal to my understanding. He may have a trait. I honestly don't know. But I bought him as a normal, so I'll just classify him as what I bought him as. But that's another kind of a cool thing, is that sometimes you have normals that actually are morphs. The next pro is that they reach a comfortable size. This is a male here, and he's about, I want to say he is over, Bubba is I want to say 2 years old, but a 2-year-old mark, maybe 2.5 years old. And he's, lengthwise, foot, he's about, a foot, 2 foot, about 2.5 feet, I would say. So he's almost about the same length as my boa. But so these guys, he's a male. Males only get, to my understanding, they say between 2 to 3 feet. So he's technically at that, mid mark, almost kind of reaching the full potential of male size. And he's a pretty big boy. When I first got him, he was already a year old, so he wasn't a baby, which that's a whole nother experience I had, because he was super defensive. But that's in the cons. We'll talk about that later. So males get about 2 to 3 feet, and females get a little bit bigger. Females are gonna get in that 3 to 5 foot range. Sometimes even get a little bit bigger than that. There's a ball python called the Volta. If you've ever heard of the Volta, check it out. Those are really cool. Those guys, they get pretty big. They get really big, actually. Those ball pythons can get 7 feet, 6 feet, and they're huge, man. So yeah, so pretty much I was trying to say that the males are gonna be smaller, and then the females are gonna be bigger. So that's with all snakes, you know. Another pro is that, like, you know, like I said before, they're so docile. These are great snakes. Like, you know, I would say with like kids handling them, you know, it's way easier. I feel more comfortable, you know, letting a kid handle, you know, a full-grown ball python, you know, over necessary. Say if it was like a 6-year-old, 7, 8-year-old, like versus them holding, say, like a boa, a full-grown boa. That's probably a little bit too big, you know. I wouldn't recommend that personally. So yeah, so if you have a kid, whatever, and you want to get your kid a snake, I think these are really cool ones, but you're gonna have to help them out, and that's another thing we're gonna talk about later. So another pro is that, like, what's kind of cool, if you were to get bit by one of these guys, the bite doesn't actually hurt that bad. With them, yeah, it's like I guess I've never been bit before, so I can't really say, knock on wood. But so if you handle them correctly and you pick them up in the right way, you know, you won't get bit. But they say a bite doesn't hurt at all. They say that it, you know, essentially it feels less than a cat scratch. So a cat scratch or a cat bite would technically hurt more. I have a German Shepherd, and I'll tell you right now, my German Shepherd has bit me and has scratched me more than I can count. This snake has not ever bit me. He has tried to when I first got him, but you know, like I said, if you handle them properly, you know, they can't bite you. I'm more comfortable with him now. He's more comfortable that I allow him to just kind of, you know, roam over me. But you know, when I first got him, dude was not with that action at all. You know, he would pretty much be on a ball. So, all right. So now let's go on to the cons. So one of the cons I kind of say is just that they're nocturnal. So if you're expecting to have an animal that's just gonna be out all day, you're gonna see it, and you're not gonna see these guys. These guys are gonna be in their hide, whether it be their cold side or their hot side, whatever they're feeling, and they're gonna pretty much be there all day. You know, these guys are nocturnal, so they're gonna, you know, for the most part, be nocturnal. They're gonna come out at nighttime, and that's like when they're usually trying to hunt, right? So nighttime, that's when you'll kind of see them. And whenever I walk into my snake room and I I'll see Bubba, he'll be you know, totally you know, he'll be out moving, and then it's just funny because, like, as soon as he sees me, he gets like shocked. He's like you know, the headlight deer look. So he gets like really shy. So that's one thing about them, like I said before, is that they're really shy. But yeah, they're nocturnal, and so yeah, you're gonna pretty much only see them at nighttime. And when you do see them at nighttime, they're gonna be like shy. So another con is that, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, they can be a little defensive at first. And that's all pet snakes though, you know. So they can all snakes be a little defensive. And I remember when I first got my ball python, that was one of my concerns. Was you know, I wanted a docile animal. I didn't want one that was going to be biting me. And so they were like, oh yeah, this is perfect. So, you know, he was way smaller than this, but I handled him. He handled well. He didn't try to bite me or anything like that. You know, he was just in a low ball. So I thought it was cool, you know, and I took him home. And then when I took him home, he looked way bigger to me. I don't know why, but it was weird. When I was there at the store, or, you know, when I was at the reptile shop, he didn't look that big, but as soon as I got home, he looked way bigger. And I was like, dang, dude, okay. But anyways, he was hissy, and he did try to bite many times. You know, he was unsuccessful. But I just continued handling him, you know, not giving up. And look at him now. He's super tame. He's awesome, dude. Really cool snake. But I do have to just put that as a con, because a lot of people will say that they're docile. I'm even saying that, but just take that with a grain of salt, as when they're babies, or even when they're just like a juvenile, or even adult, if they're just if they're not used to being handled, they can be a little nippy. So just be aware of that. But that's totally fixable. Once again, that's why I struggle with saying whether these are great beginner pets or more intermediate. I struggle between that because of those kind of, it really depends on your maturation level, which makes me lean more intermediate. But I think this was my beginner snake, and this what really got me, you know, really into the hobby, and now I have multiple snakes. So it's just one of those things, but I was super like geeking and nerding out about it, like in the sense of like doing my research and, you know, getting any supplies that I needed to, you know, if my husbandry was off a little bit, I would do hardcore research and try to figure out, you know, how to get my humidity up, and I would successfully do that, you know. But anyways, it does take a little work, and that's like almost with like any snake. And so it's not so much of like what's the easiest one, because none of them are really that easy. It's just you get a routine down. The routine is way easier than having a dog. Like I said, I have a German Shepherd. I've taken my dog out about 4, 5, 6 times a day, right, on walks. I don't have to take my snake out like that many times. I take Bubba out here maybe like once a day, sometimes twice. It depends on how he's feeling, but you know, I don't need to handle him like every day of the second. You know, every second of the day. They don't need that type of attention. In fact, they kind of prefer to be left alone for the most part, if I'm being honest. But they like to come out. I feel like it's this is what you call an enriching experience for them, just being able to come out and smell the air and taste, you know, and be able to exercise. So anyways, sorry, we're on cons, right? And you see the cons kind of sound like pros a little bit. Another con that they're notorious for is eating. So these guys can sometimes be very finicky eaters. When I first got him, he was a really good eater. You know, he ate for me like 2 times straight, back to back. And after that, he didn't eat for me for about like 2 weeks, like 2.5 weeks or so. And I was finally able to get him eating again, because what I did was I went to a smaller rodent. So I went to mice, because at first he was on small rats when I first got him. And then I switched them to mice, and then with mice, he was eating them, he loved them. And then I switched them back to small rats, and he hasn't missed a meal, you know, ever since then. So I feed him about once every 2 weeks now, because he's an adult, and you don't really need to overfeed them. These guys, you know, can store fat really well. These are, you know, pretty beefy snakes. They can get pretty beefy, so you know, you want to feed them correctly. Otherwise, you know, like just like any animal, if you overfeed them, they'll die. You know, they can die sooner, and that's just something you obviously want to avoid, right? So I was kind of alluding to this earlier, but one of the cons I would say is like when people say that they're super easy, I would say is that you still have to master humidity, right? These guys do require like 65% humidity plus. So like sometimes your humidity is going to need to be about like 80 when they're in shed. When he's in shed, I usually bump his humidity to about 80, 85. Well, I would say 80 roughly. Nothing less than 75% when he's in shed. And that is just because, you know, you want to avoid them being stuck shed, and that could be really bad. You know, you really want to avoid stuck shed. So pretty much like with the right substrate and the right humidity, well, the right substrate will keep your humidity up. But all I'm trying to say here is that it's really important to do that, and that's something that, like, you know, you can't sleep on. You can't like not check on that today. You know, that's something you have to kind of do daily. But I would say for the most part, like with the right setup and the right tools, it's very easy. But if you're doing it half-assed, it's going to be very difficult. And that's just the truth, right? So all the reason why I'm bringing up humidity is because, like, if you're, say like you're a parent and you want to buy your kid a ball python, you're probably gonna have to help them with that, right? You're gonna have to teach them, how to boost the humidity and all that stuff. So you're gonna have to kind of be the teacher for your kid if that's what you choose to do. This is not like a goldfish where you just like kind of pop it in a room and you just let it just do its thing and sprinkle some food in. I don't recommend that with these animals. And, I would say, like, especially if you want to handle them and stuff, you want to start handling them, as soon as you wait like 2 weeks, whatever. But my point is that you want to handle them as soon as you can, just to get them tamed, because that's, it's going to make your life a lot easier, and it's going to make, it easier for your pet. Say if you need to clean the enclosure and you got to take them out, if you have a snake that is, afraid, and you're afraid of it, it's going to make your time very stressful. So, just avoid that. And handle them. What do you say, Bowie? Bubba? Sorry, called you Bowie. I meant Bubba. That does it on the pros and cons. Once again, I'm not trying to deter you from wanting to get a ball python. I think if this is what you want, you should definitely do it. Just once again, do your research, right? So now we're going to talk about handability, cost, and size. We kind of talked a little bit about these things, but we'll break it down just quickly on these topics. You're talking about buying a ball python, and I just want to be real with you in the sense of like the kind of things you should kind of expect. And so like handability, I kind of alluded to this earlier. They're really easy to handle. At first they're going to kind of probably be in a ball every time you bring them out. You know, my ball python doesn't because he's used to being handled, and so he's super docile, and so he doesn't mind it. So yeah. So when people say they're pet rocks, whenever someone says that to me, I just think of like somebody who never handles their ball python, and they, you know, maybe handle it like once a week, once a month, and it's gonna be, you know, it's in its defense mode, kind of like where, you know, not gonna bite you, but they just ball up in a ball because that's just what they do. That's what they're called. Ball pythons. I mean, they're really called royal pythons, but in the US, people call them ball pythons because they ball up. I think royal python sounds cooler, but you know, they are called ball pythons, so it is what it is. Like I said, super fun to handle, totally a Netflix and chill kind of snake. You want to sit on a couch and you want to watch a movie, you know, you can just literally bring your snake out, and they are, you know, bring your ball python out, and honestly, like, he just lays in my lap and he's stretched out and he's just like looking at TV kind of with me. So it's kind of interesting to see. So cost, we kind of talked about this a little bit. You know, they're pretty cheap. I wouldn't say cheap, but I mean, you can get them for under $100. I've heard people say like, they get them for even like less than that at like shows. So you can always, you know, go to a show and get one for even cheaper. That is a thing you can do. But yeah, so I would say, like, you know, on average, they're about, where your head go? On average, they go for about, like I said, under 100, and they can go to the thousands because there's different morphs. So that's kind of cool about them. So if you get a morph, you know, there's so many different types of morphs. Like the clown, for example, the clown morph looks really cool, and they're about like $1,000 as an example, right? Food and supplies, they're not too expensive to feed. I feed my snakes frozen thaw, and I would say like I get like a pack, or I would say for a small rat, which is what Bubba's on here, that's what he's eating right now. Small rats usually go about $3.50, or, you know, like $3 roughly. So, you know, and he only eats like twice a month, so $6 for food a month, right? Substrate, I do a substrate mix for all my snakes. It's the same one, and the two that I do cost about $25 a piece, and that lasts, say if you just have one snake, whatever, that would easily last you about a couple, maybe like 2-3 months worth of substrate for your animal. Their enclosures, like I said, if you get a male, males are about like that 2 to 3 feet roughly. Females get that like 4 to 5 or 3 to 5 feet. So, you know, this enclosure right here is a 36-inch by 18 by 18. It's perfect for him because he's, you know, he's only going to be 3 feet max, you know, so he totally, you know, can fit in there, and that can kind of be his forever kind of size tank or enclosure. But I am going to switch all these enclosures into different enclosures in the future when I move. So these are just temporary, but still gonna make them look nice, right? But yeah, so my whole point is like their enclosures don't have to be as big as, say, like a, you know, a boa constrictor, which their enclosures, you know, as they grow slow, but as they grow, they're gonna get way bigger than a ball python. But like I said, ball pythons don't get that big, so you don't really have to have some crazy big enclosure. You can have something as simple as the one I have right there in the background that you can see. And that's where Bubba lives. That's his little home. So yeah, I kind of just went over size right there. So like size, once you know, I just said size, I won't repeat that. But yeah, so anyways, we just went over handability, cost, and the size of them. So, you know, hopefully that gives you some insight as to what to really expect with your ball python if you do decide to get one. I recommend them. I think they're awesome. I just say, like, you know, once again, just make sure you do your homework on them. They make great pets. Once again, you just gotta do your homework on them. And I find them to be kind of a challenge. Well, yeah, Bubble was definitely a challenge for me, but he definitely, like, you know, came through. I would say that's the best way to say it. It was worth it in the end. I would just say, like, you know, whenever you do decide to do it, you know, it may be a little stressful in the beginning, and so that's why I highly recommend, you know, joining like a Facebook group or something like that, like where you can be surrounded by other, you know, enthusiasts or people in the hobby, breeders, people who have like great information that they can give you, right? So that does it, fam. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you have any questions, you know, drop them in the comments below. If you are down to subscribe, make sure you subscribe. You can see Bubba here and all my other snakes grow, and you can see my collection grow, which it's gonna grow because I love snakes. So overall, if you put in the time, these guys make great snakes. If you're a parent, you're probably gonna have to help your kid. You're probably gonna have to be comfortable with handling the snake. You know, they're really easy to handle, so you know, it's nothing to be afraid of. If you're afraid, you can always use like gardener gloves. I personally don't really recommend them just because if they were to bite you, you want their teeth to get stuck in those, but that's just my personal opinion on the matter. But a lot of people do that just to kind of make them feel a little bit more comfortable when handling them. But I would say you're gonna be fine. You know, these guys make great pets. Just, you know, I would say just once again, do your homework, do your research, you know, just be adaptable. That's the best way to really describe all of this, is just like how adaptable you can be, in the sense like there's always new things people are learning, especially if you're a beginner. If you're the beginner in the hobby, I remember when I was, you know, even when I did all my research, you know, there were still things I was missing, and that's what made me really want to kind of start my own channel, was because of that. Like, I just felt there was so much misinformation, you know, the misinformation isn't intended. I feel a lot of people aren't trying to, you know, purposely give you bad information. It's just like, you know, it's bad habits that they're trying to pass on. You know what I'm saying? And it's just those type of things you just got to be weary of, because those habits or those particular things can then cause harm to your snake. And my whole point is that, you know, I want it to be stress-free as possible for you, because that's the only way you're really going to enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got your snake home, you're excited, you should enjoy it. You shouldn't be like afraid of it, or, you know, in stress because now it has a respiratory illness and you don't even want to pick it up, and, you know, now you have to go to the vet. And you know what I'm saying? Those things are so avoidable, you know, if you just do it the right way. And so that's all I'm trying to say. You do it the right way, you know, your snake's not going to be defensive, your snake's going to be comfortable, you know, and you're going to have a docile, cool animal like this, you know? So yeah, is it easy? Yes, but you're gonna have to put in the work. And that goes for like any snake, really. I don't know any snake that you can just like have and not put in any work, and then it's just, you know, it's cool. Like, I don't know. Maybe they exist, maybe they don't. But yeah, so ball pythons, totally great snakes, I think. I'm gonna say I'm in between. Like, I don't really have a direct answer. You know, are they great beginner snakes? I think it's a mix, right? Like, you could be a beginner. That's right there. Like, you could be a beginner in the trade, right? Or you can be a beginner in the hobby, but totally kick butt. You know what I'm saying? And then you can also totally not. You know, so it's not so much that you have to be like a, you know, an intermediate reptile keeper in order to have these guys. You just gotta want to put in the time and effort and energy. That's just it, really, honestly. So anyways, I know it's a long video today, but thanks again for watching. You know, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. And yeah, that does it, fam. Thanks for watching. Until next time, Blkhippiee out. Bubba out. Peace.